At 5:55 a.m. in Shreveport, Louisiana, a single emergency call came into dispatch, but nobody on the other side of that phone line understood. They were about to walk into one of the deadliest family-related crime scenes the city had ever seen. Officers were first told they were responding to a domestic disturbance, something police deal with almost every day, but within minutes, the situation spiraled into complete chaos. Multiple calls started flooding emergency lines. Reports began coming from different locations, and investigators quickly realized this was no longer a normal domestic dispute. Something far worse was happening. The suspect was later identified as 31-year-old Shamar Elkins. According to investigators, the violence unfolded across two different homes connected to the same family situation. What shocked both investigators and the public was not only the brutality of the incident, but how unbelievably fast everything escalated. By the time officers fully understood what they were dealing with, multiple victims had already been found, and the suspect was already moving away from the original scene. The first emergency calls reportedly came from a residence on West 79th Street in the Cedar Grove neighborhood. One caller allegedly told dispatchers that there was an armed individual inside the home, and that people were trying to hide and survive while waiting for officers to arrive. But before police could even secure the first location, another shooting was reported nearby on Harrison Street. Suddenly, investigators were dealing with multiple scenes connected to the same suspect, forcing officers to split resources and respond in real time without a complete understanding of the situation. Neighbors later described waking up to sirens, flashing lights, screaming, and confusion spreading through the area before sunrise. What made the scene even more disturbing was the realization that many of the victims were children. According to reports released later, investigators believed 7 of the 8 children killed were the suspect's own children. 2 adult women were also reportedly wounded during the violence, with some reports indicating that one of them may have been connected to an ongoing domestic dispute involving the suspect. As investigators reconstructed the timeline, they discovered that the entire sequence of events unfolded extremely quickly. Within less than an hour, what started as a domestic conflict reportedly escalated into multiple shootings, multiple crime scenes, a vehicle theft, and eventually a police pursuit moving into another part of the city. This rapid escalation became one of the most difficult aspects of the case for investigators to process afterward, because there was almost no time for officers to stabilize the first scene before the next phase had already begun.
According to police reports, after leaving the original locations, Elkins allegedly carjacked a red Kia Sportage and fled the area. This immediately transformed the situation from a contained residential emergency into a moving citywide manhunt. Law enforcement units from multiple areas began coordinating through dispatch systems while trying to track the suspect's movements. Officers reportedly pursued the vehicle into Bossier City as updates continued coming in from the earlier crime scenes. What makes this case especially disturbing is that investigators later described it not as a random mass shooting, but as a domestic violence-related incident that spiraled completely out of control. That detail changed the way many people looked at the case afterward, because it suggested the violence may have developed from emotional conflict and instability that had been building. Long before that morning, neighbors and people familiar with the family later described tension inside the household, although nobody expected it to escalate into something this catastrophic. As the investigation continued, authorities also began examining how the suspect obtained access to weapons and whether warning signs existed before the attack. Federal investigators later filed additional gun-related charges connected to individuals allegedly associated with the firearm involved in the massacre. That development added another layer to the case because investigators were no longer only asking what happened during the attack, but also whether anything surrounding the suspect's environment may have helped enable the violence before it occurred. By the time the pursuit ended in Bossier City, the suspect was found dead, bringing the immediate threat to an end. However, authorities stated that parts of the timeline were still under review, including the exact sequence of the final confrontation and how events unfolded during the chase. Even after the active danger ended, investigators continued working through scene reconstruction, evidence collection, witness interviews, and timeline analysis in order to understand every stage of what happened. What continues to disturb many people about this case is not only the scale of the tragedy but the speed. In less than a single morning, a domestic dispute reportedly evolved into one of the deadliest family-related incidents in the area's recent history. There was no long public warning, no extended standoff broadcast on television, only a sudden collapse into violence that moved faster than anyone nearby could fully process in real time. And even now, one of the biggest questions surrounding the case remains the same. What exactly pushed the situation to that point? Investigators can reconstruct movements, analyze evidence, and build timelines, but understanding the emotional and psychological breakdown behind a crime like this is far more difficult. Cases like this leave behind more than crime scenes.
Cases like this leave behind more than crime scenes. They leave behind unanswered questions about warning signs, intervention, family conflict, and whether any moment existed where the outcome could have been prevented before everything spiraled beyond control. Because in the end, what makes stories like this so terrifying is not only what happened, but how quickly an ordinary morning turned into a nightmare that permanently changed multiple lives forever.
If you made it this far, let me know your thoughts about this case in the comments below, because stories like this leave behind more questions than answers. And if you enjoy deep true crime breakdowns, disturbing investigations, and mystery-style documentaries like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next case. There are many more stories we're going to cover, cases that became darker the deeper investigators looked into them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next investigation.